During my mid-20s, I found myself trapped in a local pizza shop. It was merely a tiny establishment that offered deliveries with a handful of tables set up for dining in. To be completely frank, the food was quite disappointing. The sole aspect that stood out about the place was its relentless 24/7 operation, attracting a parade of inebriated souls who stumbled in at all hours of the night. I frequently toiled in solitude, yet I found no displeasure in it. De hecho, lo preferia. Every dish was simple to prepare, and during the lulls, I often found myself free to do as I pleased while time dragged on. This night began like any other, but an unsettling feeling lingered in the air. I arrived at 9 p.m. and assumed the responsibilities of the day manager. That night was supposed to be uneventful, just an ordinary Tuesday, and I was ready for a relaxing evening. But something felt off, like an unsettling anticipation hanging in the air. I prepared some of the workstations in the back, anxiously waiting for any orders to come through. Tuve algunos clientes en las próximas horas, pero luego todo quedó en un inquietante silencio. No se permiten visitas ni llamadas. I found myself sitting in a chair at the back of the kitchen, mindlessly scrolling on my phone for what felt like an eternity. But around 1 a.m., I heard the bell by the door ring, a sound that echoed ominously every time someone opened the door. I got up and walked to the front where the counter was, but I froze as soon as I caught sight of the main room. There was absolutely no one inside. I stood frozen, scanning the surroundings, yet there was no one in sight. A fleeting smile flickered on my face as I cautiously moved forward, ensuring with meticulous care that no one had entered. I was utterly shocked, as if my mind had been so conditioned to that sound echoing through the night that it began to deceive me in the most unsettling way. Con la certeza de que no era nada, regresé a mi silla en la cocina. I was completely taken aback and couldn't process it further. For the next 15 minutes, an unsettling silence lingered, with no calls or customers in sight, until I heard the bell ring once more, sending chills down my spine. This time, I wasn't even watching a video when it happened, and the realization hit me hard. I actually heard it. I rose and stepped into the main room, but halted in bewilderment once more. There was absolutely no one inside. After a second, I approached the front door and opened it, cautiously peering outside and scanning the sidewalk that ran alongside the building. There was an eerie silence, an unsettling emptiness, with not a single soul in sight, not even the faintest hint of a car in the parking lot. I wouldn't say I was truly terrified or unsettled, but rather just completely bewildered. I fumbled with the door for a while, desperately hoping it would make a sound without having to open it, but it remained silent. This was truly unsettling, and I felt completely at a loss for how to handle it. I lingered at the front for what felt like an eternity, at least 30 minutes, anxiously anticipating the door to ring once more, but it remained silent. Reluctantly, I returned to the kitchen. It was between 2 and 3 a.m., a time that felt like an eternity, shrouded in an unsettling stillness that made every second stretch painfully long. Sin sorpresa, una vez que volvían a estar en la parte de atrás, solo pasaron unos pocos minutos antes de que la puerta sonara de nuevo. This time I remained seated, straining to hear if anyone was nearby. No escuché nada, pero por si acaso, grité. No response came at all. I thought it was merely the door acting up, so I brushed it off, kept my distance, and focused on my phone. Inexplicably, there was an eerie absence of customers for an entire hour following that, rendering the last 3 hours utterly lifeless. It was 4 a.m., and as I faced the impending hour, I felt a chill run down my spine while I began to prepare everything for the next shift. I rose from my place and made my way to the front. Comencé a contar el registro desde los pocos pedidos que tenía al inicio de mi turno, pero mientras estaba allí, una sensación inquietante me invadió. Something felt deeply unsettling. I continued to gaze at the vacant room in front of me, then glanced back at the kitchen, an unsettling sensation creeping over me as if unseen eyes were upon me. I believed it was merely the strange circumstances of the night I was experiencing, with the door and all that. I could hardly contain my relief that my shift was about to end. Just a few moments later, an unsettling thump echoed from the floor behind me. It felt as if a heavy boot had slammed down on the earth, sending an icy shiver coursing through my body, compelling me to whirl around in alarm. I felt my breath escape from my lungs. A man loomed just 5 or 6 feet away from me. He wore tattered black clothing with a hoodie that hung ominously over his face, obscuring everything but his eyes. His eyes were sunken and filled with a haunting emptiness. I can't tell if he was intoxicated or under the influence, but it was evident that he was completely out of his mind at that moment. Then I noticed his left hand gripping a knife. His knuckles were ghostly pale from the intensity of his grip. I remained frozen, desperately attempting to avoid any escalation, but after what felt like an eternity of his unblinking gaze, I felt compelled to break the silence. "Hey, listen, you can take the money from the register. I have nothing to say." "Just let me go, please," I uttered, grasping for any words that might free me from this nightmare. He remained frozen in place, gripping the knife tightly, his gaze distant and haunting. Honestly, I think I was even more shaken because he clearly wasn't just an ordinary guy. It was impossible to foresee his next move. The counter I was at twisted ominously, stretching toward the shadows at the back where he lurked. To escape, I'd need to dash a few feet toward him, navigate around the counter, and then make a frantic sprint back to the front door. With him merely 5 feet away, the chilling reality struck me that he could effortlessly seize me or launch an attack if I made a move. Thus, I resorted to the alternative that seemed most viable. I practically leaped over the counter in sheer disbelief. It was far from appealing, yet somehow it managed to function. I crashed to the ground and managed to rise again. The man was charging toward me, his expression twisted with a terrifying mix of fury and a thirst for violence. I burst through the door, my heart racing, barely managing to escape just seconds before I heard him follow me out. He was uncomfortably close, making it impossible for me to even consider getting inside my car, which was lurking behind the building. I ran with all my might, reaching the road, praying that a car would appear and offer salvation. But at some point, he ceased the pursuit. No tengo idea de cuándo, porque estaba tan concentrado en correr que no miré atrás. I called the cops and stood by the road, anxiously waiting for them to arrive. It took an excruciatingly long 5 minutes. The guy disappeared, but I suppose after pursuing me, he returned to the shop and utterly wrecked the entire place. Everything was in ruins, and he slipped out the back door, dragging his knife menacingly along the side of my car. It seems he was lurking in the shadows, observing me through the windows from afar, using the door as a mere ruse, intent on sneaking in unnoticed. Honestly, it functioned flawlessly, leaving me feeling utterly foolish. It's unsettling to realize that there was nearly an hour between the last doorbell chime and my sighting of him, suggesting he might have been lurking within the shop all that time. It's truly unsettling because I genuinely had no clue who he was. I genuinely believed he was merely an ordinary individual, yet his behavior felt unsettlingly focused on me. Perhaps it was merely a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. I have no idea. He was never found. No me quedé trabajando allí mucho tiempo después de eso, temiendo que él pudiera regresar. It was a few years back, during a time when I was juggling 2 jobs, desperately trying to save enough for a condo. I once had a secure 9-to-5 full-time job, but I took on deliveries to earn some extra cash whenever I could find the time. In fact, I often found myself trapped in a grueling cycle of 30 hours a week, relentlessly making deliveries every single day after work. Esta noche, comencé después de cenar a las 6:30. It was a night that left me feeling uneasy, to be honest. I was receiving numerous great orders with generous tips, so honestly, I should have just called it a night and allowed myself some much-needed rest. But I was consumed by an insatiable desire. Continué trabajando, con la inquietante esperanza de seguir recibiendo pedidos bien remunerados. By the time it was 11, everything had come to a crawl, and the last few orders I had completed were nothing short of disappointing. I was desperate to find a satisfactory conclusion, so I continued to drive around, hoping to stumble upon something that was at least acceptable. At last, when an opportunity presented itself, I hastily embraced it. Can you believe it? Nearly $20 for a delivery that's just 15 minutes away. Who in their right mind would refuse that? As soon as I received the food, I began my journey to the address, a sense of dread creeping in. The roads were eerily quiet and desolate at this time of night, making the drive there unsettlingly smooth. However, it led me to a shadowy part of town that I had no idea contained any houses. I double-checked my route multiple times, consumed by the need to confirm I was heading in the correct direction. As I approached the final turn, I found myself on a meticulously kept gravel road, leading ominously into the depths of the forest. I drove a short distance until I encountered a gate. It was one of those small ones, essentially just two pillars looming on either side of the path, with a chain ominously stretching between them. The chain on these was down, so I drove through, feeling a sense of unease. My headlights were dim, casting eerie shadows that danced in the darkness. I could barely make out the path ahead, but soon after passing through the gate, I found myself in a parking area, the silence around me thick and unsettling. I was utterly bewildered. It absolutely was not guiding us to a house. I pulled into a space and put my car in park, then glanced out my windows, my heart racing as I surveyed the surroundings. There was a sign on one end, and it sent chills down my spine. This was a forest preserve, a place that once felt serene, now shrouded in an unsettling aura. I had made deliveries to parks and similar places before, but I always assumed forest preserves shut down around 8 or 9, and there was no one around to receive the order. Just as I was beginning to doubt my purpose in this unsettling situation, my phone suddenly erupted with a shrill ring. It was the customer, and the realization sent chills down my spine. I answered the call. The voice on the other end was a deep male voice, gravelly and rugged, to the point of being nearly incomprehensible. He claimed to have spotted my parking on the map and inquired if I could catch a glimpse of him. I firmly declined, yet he insisted that he was out camping with friends along one of the trails, suggesting that I would surely see a campfire if I ventured a bit nearer. I reluctantly agreed, coming to the unsettling conclusion that this was likely the reason for the unusually large tip. I did mention to him that I thought the forest preserves were closed, but he insisted that this one permitted overnight camping on specific days. I wasn't particularly fond of the outdoors, so I was completely unaware of the situation. I couldn't fathom why he would need to fabricate anything. I switched off my car and stepped out, clutching the bag of food tightly. In an instant, I was struck by the oppressive darkness, forcing me to rely on my phone's feeble light to navigate the unsettling surroundings. There was only one trail leading out from the parking area, which was a small comfort in the unsettling silence that surrounded me. I began to walk, a sense of dread creeping in with every step. It was eerily quiet outside. I anticipated the sound of the group of guys chatting and laughing in the distance, yet there was nothing. It was merely the wind and the unsettling chirps of crickets. Then I saw the light, an orange flame ominously glowing and flickering out in the trees. Strangely, it was not located on the path, nor was it immediately beside it. It was incredibly remote, shrouded by the dense trees that loomed ominously around it. I was unable to discern the trail ahead, uncertain if a direct route lay before me, yet I felt compelled to move directly toward the ominous flame. As I approached, an unsettling feeling washed over me, and everything began to feel increasingly bizarre. To begin with, I heard no voices at all, and upon getting even closer, I found no one in sight. It was merely a small campfire, flickering ominously in the vast emptiness around it. Sin sillas, sin carpus, literalmente nada. I hardly had time to mutter, "What the hell?" before a stick cracked ominously from somewhere among the trees. I snapped my head around at the noise. There was someone there, lurking in the shadows just beyond the reach of the light. The indistinct figure I could barely discern stood frozen, as if they were desperately attempting to remain unnoticed. I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. "Hola! Soy el conductor de la entrega. I'll just place your order right here." I screamed and dropped the bag to the floor. As I did, they abruptly chose to reveal themselves and approached me with an unsettling presence. The man loomed tall, his dark hair disheveled and a scruffy beard that seemed to harbor secrets untold. He offered an apology, claiming he hadn't noticed me approaching. It was that same deep, gravelly voice from the phone, sending chills down my spine. His smile sent chills down my spine, as if it were a mask hiding something sinister, and it was deeply unsettling that he revealed himself only after he realized I was watching. Everything felt completely off. I fumbled with my words, but as he approached, an overwhelming urge to flee took over me. He called out several times in a disturbingly sweet voice, urging me to return, claiming he had cash for me. I couldn't bring myself to pause until I reached the car. I fumbled around with my keys, my hands trembling uncontrollably as I desperately tried to hurry in and turn it on. I reversed, steering onto the gravel path to escape, but suddenly had to slam on my brakes. The chain was ominously latched across the pillars now, sealing off the exit. I fixated on it for an eternity, grappling with the thought of escaping and unfastening it, or contemplating my next move. Then I heard footsteps creeping up behind my car. I didn't even glance. I just slammed the accelerator onto the grass and maneuvered around the pillars. It was an incredibly tense situation, as a narrow ditch loomed perilously close to the edges. One wrong move, and my car could easily have slipped down, potentially becoming trapped in the depths below. As soon as I found myself on the gravel again, I took off in a rush. I was completely taken aback by what I encountered back there. It was foolish of me not to alert the authorities, but deep down, I felt that by the time they arrived, whatever it was would have vanished into thin air. The next morning, I conducted some research and discovered that the forest preserve I visited indeed closed at 8 p.m, and camping or campfires were strictly prohibited. To me, that underscores the dreadful reality of the situation I found myself in. The intentions behind his actions remain a mystery, and the chilling thoughts of what might have transpired in the forest that night continue to torment my mind. I am employed at a data center. It's in a cramped, unsettling warehouse that doubles as an office. My job is to simply watch a screen. If anything goes wrong, I rush to the operating rooms, typically just to perform a quick restart. It's a straightforward and uncomplicated job, and since it's overnight and solely my responsibility, I have the freedom to do as I please, as long as I remain vigilant about the status of all the systems. Although, I'm certain you can sense the overwhelming tedium that can engulf one at times. By the time this occurred, I had already been deeply troubled and had contemplated quitting numerous times, yet I compelled myself to endure. Regardless, that night, I made my way to the office at my usual 10 p.m, feeling an unsettling chill in the air. The building loomed at the end of a desolate road, shrouded by looming trees, creating an unsettling emptiness devoid of cars or any signs of life. I parked and made my way to the office, feeling an unsettling chill in the air. This week, I found myself glued to a show on Netflix that had consumed my every thought during my shifts. After a quick inspection of the computers, I rushed to set up my laptop and plunged into the eerie world of my show. For reference, there are typically no trips in any of the systems during my shift. Given that it's overnight, the burden on everything is reduced, making it less probable for anything to occur. It happens perhaps twice a week that an outage occurs, and it's always just one system that I can swiftly restart to restore functionality. I managed to endure nearly 2 episodes of my show, roughly 2 hours in, when an unsettling notification suddenly appeared on the monitor. One of the systems has lost connection. I abruptly halted the show and stood up, a chill creeping over me. I descended the stairs and navigated through a series of dimly lit corridors until I arrived at the vast storage room that served as the nerve center of the data center. There were enormous, towering rows of shelves stretching ominously throughout the room. The notification I received included a row and section number. I cautiously made my way down the aisle, my heart racing as I approached the right section. It was the very last row, tucked away in the far corner, and it was unsettlingly clear why it was empty. The primary power cable was not connected. It was sprawled on the ground as if it had been yanked away or had tumbled out in a disturbing manner. I was utterly shocked by how that could even happen. In all my years on the job, I had never witnessed a heavy-duty cable just drop out like that. It was utterly shocking. It simply does not occur. In any case, no matter how it occurred, I reconnected it and powered up the system. Everything suddenly returned to life, and it appeared to be functioning as it should. The only conceivable explanation was that it somehow managed to wriggle free from the socket. Perhaps, with the passage of time, it gradually unraveled, and tonight it ominously tumbled out. I hurried through the remaining aisles, anxiously scanning for anything else as I made my way through that unsettling place. Then I began to retrace my steps through the dark, unsettling corridors and made my way back to the office. While I wandered through one of the corridors, an eerie and unsettling sound pierced the silence, sending chills down my spine. It felt as if a massive door slammed shut with a bone-chilling finality. It was unsettling, particularly with the eerie silence that enveloped the entire building. Regrettably, I was completely unaware of the rest of the warehouse's layout, leaving me in a state of uncertainty about whether it was indeed a door, and if so, which one or where it might be located. And although it sounded like a door, it could have been something far more sinister. This was a massive warehouse, and often the metal pipes would bend and creak in the walls, or produce unsettling thump sounds that echoed through the shadows. It was that chilling sound I had never encountered before. I stumbled back to the room and sank into the chair. I meticulously scrutinized the systems once more, then proceeded with my show, a sense of unease creeping in. Just a few minutes had gone by, and I had barely managed to get through one scene when I suddenly heard the rapid sound of footsteps darting through the corridor beside me. It startled me intensely, but I managed to rise and open the door, peering down the dark hallway. There was absolutely nothing there, just a desolate corridor stretching into darkness, with a solitary door looming at the far end. But it felt as if it was lurking right outside the office I was in. I realized that if I didn't take a look around, my mind would be consumed by it endlessly. I approached the end, my heart racing, and slowly opened the door. As I did, and glanced down the next hallway, I caught a fleeting glimpse of the door at the far end, shutting ominously, as if someone had just slipped through it. My heart was racing uncontrollably. I hesitantly advanced, my heart racing, and slowly opened the door. This one opened into a dimly lit hallway lined with numerous office doors, each one seemingly holding untold secrets behind them. "Is anyone lurking in here?" "Hola!" My voice reverberated ominously through the corridor. I cautiously stepped inside, my heart racing with unease. It was unsettlingly quiet, with not a single sound echoing through the building. Could they possibly be lurking in one of these office rooms? As that thought slithered into my mind, a wave of dread washed over me, compelling me to halt my steps and retreat from that hallway. I stepped back toward the door, but at that moment, one of the office doors beside me burst open. I barely saw a figure darting from the darkened room before I spun around and fled in terror. I could hear his footsteps echo behind me as I rushed to the next corridor and into the staircase. I couldn't bear the thought of being caught, so I bolted through the fire exit door and dashed into the parking lot. As I approached my car, a wave of dread washed over me, and I immediately began dialing the police. Whoever was in there didn't pursue me through the same exit, though. The police arrived swiftly and conducted a thorough search of the entire building, which lasted almost 30 minutes, yet the man had vanished without a trace. They likely fled through another exit and vanished into the dark woods behind the building. His presence in there revealed so much, leaving me unsettled. The wire that had been disconnected earlier in the night lay ominously on the corner section, a silent witness to the man's careless movements as he crept around in the shadows. The company I worked for conducted an extensive investigation to analyze security footage, desperately trying to uncover how he managed to gain entry and whether anything was taken. No obtuve mucha información al respecto, sin embargo, porque no tengo autorización. It's evident that whatever he was doing in there, he definitely didn't want me to find out, and was likely scheming to keep his secrets safe from me. How he could have done that after guiding me through the corridors is something I am grateful to remain unaware of.